You wrap your shawl tighter, fingers stiff from a day spent mending by firelight, and outside, the frost begins to whisper along the path home. A pale bruise of dusk settles over the thatch-roofed cottages, and each breath rises in soft, silver clouds that drift toward a growing darkness. You pause at the gate, listening as snow crunches under your boots, each step a gentle echo in the hushed world of evening. A chill wind squeezes through the worn edges of the wooden shutters, slipping past cracks and settling into the corners of your small cottage. Inside, the air smells of turnip stew and smoked ham, mingling with the faint, earthy scent of damp straw mats. You set your basket of firewood beside the hearth, its contents heavy and rough, the logs darkened by rain and moss. As the final orange glow of sunset fades, you gather a handful of kindling and coax the embers to life, watching each spark dance before your eyes like tiny fireflies. Through the small window, you glimpse the slow pull of twilight across your village. The church bell, muffled by snow, tolls twice, an invitation to evening prayers or a reminder that the day's labor has ended. Footprints in the street mark your neighbor's journeys home. A stray dog, a lone traveler, a cart abandoned until dawn. Your husband, Jonas, sits low on a wooden stool, shoulders wrapped in a threadbare cloak, eyes tracing the flicker of shadows that stretch across the wattle and daub walls. He offers you a quiet nod, the warmth of his presence more comforting than any ember. Your daughter, little Lily, rests her head on his knee, her curls soft as lamb's wool. She watches the firelight in hypnotic patterns, her breath slow and steady, already half lost in a quiet dream of summer blossoms and running streams. Outside, the wind gathers strength, rattling the shutters like distant hooves. You move to close the window, your fingertips brushing the frosted latch, cold enough to bite. You imagine the tiny crystals clinging to the glass like fragile dreams, and for a moment, you wonder how many winters your cottage will see. Yet the stout walls hold against the cold, and the hearth's heat seems to push the night back, if only by inches. As the fire crackles, you lift the lid from the pot of stew. A soft hiss greets you, and the aroma of root vegetables mingles with the smoky tang of cured meat. You ladle a bowl for each of you. The first spoonful warms your chest, a comfort deeper than 1,000 blankets. You feel the hum of life in your belly, a reminder that you are safe here, held by family and flame. Even the barn cat curls into a tight ball on the earthen floor, drawn by the scent of stew and the gentle heat of the hearth. The villagers say this winter will be harsher than the last. Stories drift in from neighboring hamlets, fields buried under snowdrifts, cows lost to the cold, barns crushed beneath ice-heavy roofs. Yet here, beneath your low beams and thatch, you carry on. You recall mornings bent over frozen ground, coaxing green shoots from hardened soil, and nights like this, spent tracing the lines of your daughter's palm as she sleeps. A single candle stands upon the rough-hewn table, its flame quivering in time with your heartbeat. You brush your fingers along its edge, marveling at how a small gleam can conquer the dark. You remember the first time you lit a candle on Midwinter's Eve, the hush that fell as every home in the valley glowed like a constellation drawn onto the earth. You felt part of something larger then, a chain of flickering lights stretching across frostbitten fields. Jonas reaches to wind a scarf around your neck, his touch gentle against your skin. You lean into his warmth and close your eyes, savoring the moment. Outside, the wind shrieks like a restless spirit, but here, by the hearth, you are sheltered. Here, stories are told, songs are whispered, and life unfurls quietly, like petals in a secret garden. The night deepens. You rise to tuck Ellie beneath a blanket, her small form heavy with trust. You press a kiss to her forehead, trailing your cold cheek along her warm skin. She murmurs something in her sleep, a half-formed word that makes you smile. You whisper a prayer of thanks for her breath, steady and soft. Returning to the fire, you draw your cloak tighter once more. The dancing shadows on the walls remind you of ancestors long past, your mother, your grandmother, who faced nights like this with hands as steady as yours and hearts as hopeful. You wonder if they, too, paused in the hush to listen to the wind's song, to lean into a stranger's warmth, to taste a simple stew and find within it a promise of sunrise. You settle back on the stool, the rough wood pressing into your legs, and watch the flames. You consider how this cold teaches you patience, how it binds you closer to those you love, and how each frozen night also carries a quiet blessing, the chance to slow, to breathe, to remember what truly warms the heart. Even as the frost gathers at the doorstep, you feel guarded by memory and love. Already, in the faint glow beyond the frost, you sense the first hint of dawn stirring beyond the horizon. A promise that cold nights must yield to morning light. If this quiet moment has settled into you, you might consider following or subscribing, so you can come back to this place whenever you need rest. You let the fire's glow lull you, and as the embers fade to gentle coals, you whisper a good night to the hush beyond the walls. In the slow beat between one heartbeat and the next, you feel the night falling, soft and sure. And there, in that delicate space, you find the first promise of rest. I stoke the hearth with a fresh shard of peat, its rough edge still damp from the bog where it was cut. The air in the great hall seems to shift, a momentary warmth pulsing outward before the chill seeps back through the earthen floor. Every spark that floats from the embers carries a promise, however fleeting, that our home may feel less like a hollow shell against the relentless winter. Here, at the heart of our cottage, the hearth is life itself. Without it, we are cold, listless, unmade. Gathering fuel is a constant labor, from the peat-laden marshes to the ancient coppice behind the churchyard. We chop logs that grow heavy with winter's moisture, their grain swollen beneath icy bark. When wood burns wet, it smolders and hisses, coughing up clouds of smoke that fill the rafters and sting our eyes. There is no chimney to sweep the soot away in one long, twisting column. Instead, we patch holes in the roof and trust that a hole above will let the acrid air find its own escape. Inside the wattle and daub walls, the open hearth sits in the center like an altar. Its lip is chipped from decades of pots and kettles balanced on iron hooks. We hang cauldrons over the coals to boil water for porridge, to simmer broth that steams through every crack. Each breath tastes of wood and peat, of dried herbs tucked between stones and rope. Even beneath layers of linen and wool, the smoke weaves around us, a constant companion to our work and our rest. We wear our clothing like armor. A linen shift next to the skin, woolen gowns over it, and a cloak at the shoulder when the wind finds its way inside. Beneath woolen caps and hoods, our ears ache from the cold when we venture too near the open doorway. We learn to judge each draft, to stand just out of sight of the crack, to angle our backs toward the heat. It is a delicate dance with warmth and cold, a constant awareness of shifting air. At night, we gather around the hearth, shoulders pressed close, our bodies a living quilt. Children curl at our feet, limbs half hidden beneath our skirts. My sister Ingrid and I share a wooden bench, her warmth a balm against my chilled bones. We wrap ourselves in fur pelts, the coarse hair still tinged with the scent of barn and meadow. That scent reminds us of spring, of fields rich with green, and it eases the ache of the present frost. The stone floor is unforgiving, but we scatter rushes across it, tangled reeds softened by time, offering a measure of cushion and a slight barrier against the cold earth. We pile straw on top of the rushes where our siblings sleep, vowing each season that next year we will collect more, line every corner, fill every gap. Yet each winter challenges our best efforts, and still the cold edges in. For cooking, the hearth demands constant attention. Fires fed too generously flare hot for a moment, then die to a dull glow. Too sparingly, and the flame wanes, turning our cauldron into a frigid pot. We learn the rhythm of fire, how many pieces of wood at once, how to coax wet logs to burn, how to cradle embers beneath fresh kindling to stir them back to life. Our hands blacken with soot, the backs of our sleeves scorched from carelessness or exhaustion. Still, we prattle softly over the hearth, teasing the flames with gentle coaxing. Even with the hearth blazing at full roar, our corners remain dark, and the shadows seem to gather where the light cannot reach. On the coldest nights, we take stones from the field, rough-hewn and heavy, and set them near the fire's heart. When they are too hot to touch, we wrap them in cloth and lie them at our feet as we sleep or work. Their heat seeps through the wool, a stubborn ember that outlasts the flame. I recall a night when the wind howled so fiercely that it blew through every crack, extinguishing the smallest candle wick and turning our hearth to a bed of chilly coals. We spent the night huddled together, murmuring small prayers, pressing bodies to preserve the last warmth. At dawn, we piled back the coals and, with slow, careful coaxing, rebuilt the blaze. That fire, once rekindled, tasted of triumph. From dawn until dusk, the hearth is our constant focus. We mend garments by its glow, spin wool into yarn where its heat dries each twisted strand, and bake flat loaves of barley bread along its embers. The hearth feeds our bodies, but it also feeds our spirits. There is a quiet magic in watching sparks lift upward, in feeling the heat seep into your bones, in offering thanks for each glowing ember. Yet the world beyond our wattle walls is cold enough to steal breath. The hearth's flame flickers under an ancient curse, or so my grandmother claimed, that winter's breath is ever stronger than human hands. We respect that curse, but we resist same. We gather our smoky triumphs, burning peat, hissing logs, glowing stones, and we guard them like treasures. Each flicker is a promise that even in deep frost, we can kindle warmth. As evening deepens, the hearth's glow casts a golden halo that dances across the rafters. Every wavering shadow feels alive, reminding us how precious each ember is against the vast, unyielding winter. In these hushed moments, we learn that warmth is not merely a comfort, but a testament to our shared endurance and resilience. Sometimes, we'd keep stones near the fire, wrap them in cloth, and tuck them in at our feet like old friends. What would you miss most on a cold night like this? Hot water, warm socks, or just a quiet room with no smoke? Feel free to share your thoughts. I turn the lid of the wooden barrel and inhale the cool, earthy scent of stored root vegetables. Turnips, parsnips, and carrots lie beneath a thick layer of straw and sand, tucked safely in their underground pit since the last days of autumn. My fingers brush over the pale skins, and I press one to my cheek, marveling at its firmness. Food is the lifeline of winter, a treasure we both depend on and fear to deplete. Each precious bite feels like a promise held between our hands. In late October, we salted pork and hung ribs by ropes in the smokehouse. Each morning, wisps of gray smoke curled through the cracks, carrying the rich, smoky aroma into our noses and guiding us back to the labor that would sustain us. We sliced meat thin and pressed it into barrels, sprinkling salt both to preserve and to ward off spoilage. The work was cold, our breath steaming in the crisp air as we labored before frost claimed the land. Women and men moved in steady rhythm, hands numb but precise, knuckles pale and trembling as they tied each knot. Herbs were gathered when their leaves still carried the sun's memory. Thyme and sage, tied in bunches, hung from beams above the hearth. Their scent challenged the smoke, bringing verdant warmth to drafty corners. We clipped rosemary for roasts and thyme for gruels, bundling each sprig and calling upon their healing properties when illnesses crept nearer in winter's hush. I still run my thumb along dried leaves, releasing their crisp aroma when the days grow long and dark. Breakfast is porridge, slow-cooked barley or oats stirred in a blackened pot over embers. With each spoonful, you taste the subtle sweetness of grains simmered in water, the comfort of warmth more than flavor. Sometimes, a handful of beans dried from last season's harvest finds its way into the pot, offering protein and a reminder that the earth still yields. In special moments, the cauldron bubbles with milk, when the cow's udder is full and the cold night has driven us to make every drop count. Our stews center on cabbage, its thick leaves folded with salted pork or dried peas. As the stew simmers, the scent drifts through the cottage, drawing my husband Jonas from his tasks in the workshop. He rests his chin on his palm, watching the simmering mass, and I ladle a bowl for him, the steam curling up to greet him like an old friend. We whisper blessings at the table, voices low so as not to spoil the quiet warmth that envelops us. Bread is baked once a week, dense loaves of barley or rye, baked on a thick stone that holds embers beneath a curved hearth. By midweek, the crust grows hard as old bark, and we soften each slice in broth or grind it into crumbs for pottage. Hunger here is not a roaring beast, but a whisper, a subtle reminder to savor each bite. The kitchen's warmth, though humble, becomes a sanctum against emptiness. Children learn early to nibble slowly, to count their bites like quiet prayers that the barrel will not run empty. I watch little Illy press her lips around a crust, small and determined. Fasting days arrive when the church calendar demands it, and our meals become more austere. No meat, no dairy, only grains and vegetables. These days remind us that sacrifice carries meaning, that body and spirit align in shared devotion. Yet even in fasting, a pot of vegetable broth simmers gently, and we sip it with gratitude. In the hush of a fasting dawn, the taste of broth feels like grace itself, a gentle warmth that fills us with humility and hope. Communal meals soften the harsh edges of winter. Once a fortnight, neighbors gather in the largest cottage or the barn's warmth, sharing what each can spare: bread crusts, pickles in earthenware jars, cheese rubbed with ash to preserve it, and a small flagon of ale warmed near embers. We pass dishes around chipped wooden platters, each offering honored and accepted. Laughter threads through the gathering, a reminder that we endure not as solitary souls but as a living tapestry of hands and hearts. Damned ash that mingles with our dreams. Not everyone sleeps through the night in one continuous stretch. In our cottage, we keep time in shifts. My sister wakes first, her body sensing the cold before her mind rises, and she returns to the hearth to coax embers back to roaring life. Later, I climb out of bed, stepping carefully on rushes scattered like broken light across the floor, and I warm water to wash my face before returning to a nest of sighs and rising fogs of breath. The hours between waking and sleeping shift like grey tides, each half-remembered dream slipping away as dawn's pale fingers reach through the window. In those moments, the world feels most fragile, sound and silence dancing together. You lie still, listening to the cadence of family breathing, to the soft scrape of your husband's cloak against the wall, to the distant crow of a rooster braving the cold. Our beds are more than places of rest. They are sanctuaries where whispered confessions are offered, where prayers are murmured into the darkness, and where plans for spring fields are sketched on bare skin by candle glow. I trace the shape of my daughter's cheek in the dark, reassure her unconscious heart that the start of a new day will come even when the stars hang heavy with frost. Sleep here is an intimate art, a weaving of bodies and blankets and warming stones that balances on the thin line between comfort and cold. You sink into this tapestry of warmth, your own breath rising in gentle clouds, and feel the pulse of lives intertwined around you. Sometimes, I dream we sleep in our summer fields, but I wake, and the cold is still here, curling around our feet. Are you cozy where you are? If not, maybe tuck a pillow behind your back, or wrap a blanket around your shoulders. You deserve that warmth. I rise before dawn's pale light, sliding from the warmth of our bed into boots stiff with frost. The sky is a soft grey hush as I step into the courtyard, the hush broken only by the faint jingle of sheep bells and the low scrape of my breath. My first task is to feed the animals before the cold steals their strength. I scoop handfuls of hay into the trough for the goats, their soft bleats a grateful chorus in the dimness. A pair of geese honk impatiently, leaning their necks through the rails for grain. I scatter handfuls of oats, each seed a small treasure in this season of scarcity. By candlelight, I fill buckets at the well, the iron rim rimed with ice. Each bucket aches with water's weight as I trudge back through knee-deep snow to the kitchen hearth. The water hisses as it heats, steam curling like a ghost that glances at our humble hearth before vanishing. Soon, I dip a rag into warm water and return to the bedchamber, where my sister Ingrid and I share the soft chore of bathing our youngest before she wakes fully. Her small hands curl around mine, sending a pulse of warmth through my chilled fingers. Dawn drifts into morning as I sit by the hearth mending clothes. The flicker of flame reveals holes worn at elbows and knees on the children's tunics. I thread a length of coarse wool into a bone needle and begin small, precise stitches. Each tug of thread draws the fabric closer together, a quiet act of care. The tap-tap of needle against cloth is nearly the only sound in the room, accompanied by the faint creak of the beam above me and the occasional pop of sap in the burning logs. When the gown is whole again, I move to the spinning wheel in the corner. My foot presses the treadle, and the whir of the wheel blends with the soft sigh of wool pulled from the basket. I spin yard after yard of yarn, imagining how it will become stockings for Jonas or blankets for the babe on its way. My fingers warm from winding fleece dyed a pale ochre by onion skins, each thread carrying the memory of spring lambs and summer pastures. Noon arrives without fanfare. I ladle porridge into wooden bowls, oats thick with the last milky washings from the goat, and share it with Ingrid. The steam rises, softening the air, carrying the faint tang of salt from the cheese rind tucked between stones in the pantry. We eat in silence, mindful that voices add chill to the room. Even our murmured thanks to Saint Bridget linger like a whispered secret on the stone walls. After the meal, I repair shoes by the hearth side. The leather soles are cracked by frozen ground and cobbled streets. I pull the supple hide through curved awls, pressing it against my lap, and stitch with waxed linen thread. Each hole I close is an assurance that our children will not have to trudge barefoot through snowdrifts. The fire's glow catches on the polished metal of the awl, and I marvel at how such a simple tool can restore someone's comfort. Afternoon light shifts as I carry more water from the well to scrub the floor with scrub brushes made from stiff fiber. The sound of bristles against wood is brisk and crisp, sweeping away tracked in snow and stray leaves wrapped by frost. In another corner, Jonas is carving a new handle for our plowshare, each shave of his knife sounding like soft thunder against the workshop table. His hammer taps a gentle rhythm as he reassembles a broken cart axle. Even his work feels like a quiet hymn to endurance. As dusk nears, I prepare a pot of cabbage stew. I slice leaves thin, fold in dried peas, and add salted pork chunks. The stew crackles as hot fat meets the blackened cauldron, and I stir to coax flavors to blend. The aroma drifts through the cottage, summoning children from sleeping corners and luring Jonas from the barn. We gather with bowls balanced on our knees, each mouthful a warm tide that eases chilled limbs and tired eyes. Once the evening meal is done, I light rush candles, hardened reeds dipped in tallow, placing them in sconces along the walls. Their glow quivers, revealing shelves where jars of preserved fruits and vinegar pickles stand as quiet sentinels against winter's hunger. I tip a small goblet of warmed ale to them, a silent toast to the bounty stored within. 30 villager families rely on such stores, and each jar is a testament to autumn's labor. Before night fully falls, I spin a few more yards of yarn, coaxing the wheel into motion again. The rhythm soothes me, and I reflect on how winter's work is a sacred pause, a time to foster what we will need when thaw comes. The hush of snow outside presses against the windows, reminding me that the earth sleeps now, but our hands remain awake. Every stitch, every churn of wheel, every handful of feed and water, knits us closer to survival. Finally, I take up a candle and wander through the cottage, checking that every hearth ember remains alive enough to rekindle with just a breath. I pause before each door, children's loft, pantry, barn stall, and pray for warmth in each space. Then I return to our small bedchamber, where bodies conjoin to share heat and repose. I shed my woolen gown, careful not to disturb Ellie's slumber, and climb beneath the blankets. My hands still smell of hay and wool, my lashes lined with ash from the hearth. Outside, wind and snow continue their silent vigil, and inside, the day's work lies completed in the glow of dim, dying embers. We rest now, gathering strength for tomorrow's tasks. In this quiet, I sense how each small, unspoken labor holds the life song of our family. Each tender stitch, each poured bucket, each cooing animal cared for, all woven into the fabric of enduring warmth. When the snow fell too deep for carts, we worked with our hands, and we listened to the wind like it had something to say. Let your mind rest for a moment. What's the smallest, quietest job you've done with love? That kind of work stays with you. The candlelight trembles along the oak table as neighbors gather close, shoulders just touching, forming a circle of quiet warmth. I settle on a worn bench beside old Marta, whose voice has the crackle of embers when she speaks. Her fingertips trace the rim of a wooden mug, and she begins a tale of Saint Bridget, a woman who turned water into milk, who fed the hungry with nothing but kindness. We lean in, breath held, as Marta's words paint miracles in the smoke-swirled air. Even the wind's howl outside seems to pause, respectful, waiting for the next blessing. When Marta's voice trails off, young Casper leaps forward with a riddle. What has no feet but runs, no lungs but breathes, and no mouth but speaks? Laughter ripples through the circle as each of us offers guesses. The river. A ghost. The flame itself. Until he reveals the answer, the wind. We exchange gleeful looks, proud and small beneath the vast night sky. A hush settles, and I draw my shawl tighter, rubbing its coarse wool between my palms. I remember the lullaby my mother sang, her words a soft tide that pulled me towards sleep. Sleep, my sweet, beneath the sky, stars like watchers, drawing nigh. I hum the melody, uncertain of every note, yet comforted by its half-remembered refrain. The tune drifts through the circle, weaving the past into our present and reminding us of home beyond these snowbound walls. Then Jonas clears his throat and offers a verse. In winter's breath, we plant our hope. In ember glow, our spirits cope. His deep voice vibrates the beam above, and I feel a shiver that is not cold but joyous. How song can bind us when frost threatens to undo our courage. Faces soften, shoulders drop. Even the kittens curled near the hearth lift their heads to listen. Stories of wolves at the forest's edge weave through our gathering, too. Ingrid recounts the night she thought she heard paws outside her window. Her breath caught in her throat until her father flung open the door with a torch, chasing phantom eyes back into shadow. We gasp, though the hearth burns bright now, and a chill ripples across our skin. These fears are old as winter itself, yet by speaking them aloud, we tame their power. Words become talismans, carrying the promise that dawn always follows darkness. Between tales, we pass around bowls of spiced cider, apple juice warmed with cloves and honey, hands clasping the vessel for a moment longer, letting the heat seep into our palms. The liquid tastes of sunlit orchards and laughter shared beneath green leaves, a distant world we recall with each sip. When the mug comes to me, I close my eyes, and for a heartbeat, I stand in summer fields, golden grass brushing my ankles. A traveling minstrel once came through our village, lute balanced on his knee, and sang of Queen Eleanor and her court. We listened, enraptured, though the song spoke of distant kings and stone castles. Still, even her story, tales of loss, exile, and unwavering hope, found purchase in our hearts. That night, around our humble hearth, we felt ourselves part of something vast. Oral tradition, they said, kept memory alive when ink faded and stones crumbled. It was our tether to the past and our compass toward the future. The firelight dims as the hour grows late. Shadows press against the walls, shifting like silent dancers. I glance at Marta, whose lined face gleams with tears unshed. Tears born of grief and comfort, recognition that life is woven from both. A final hush falls. I lean forward and whisper a story of my own making, of a brave girl who carried embers through blizzard winds to save her family's hearth. In each word, I lay down hope, as I have done since childhood, trusting that stories will guide us through the darkest nights. My grandmother's voice, half whisper, half lullaby, still hums in the corners of my memory when the winds moan too loud. If there's a story or song you loved as a child, maybe bring it back tonight. Whisper it to the dark. Or share it with us, if you'd like. I wake before dawn, my breath a thin mist in the frigid air, to the sound of hushed sobs from the chamber beyond. My sister Ingrid's voice trembles as she tends to our mother, whose cough has echoed through the night like a grief-stricken song. Winter's chill has always tested the strength of our bodies, but illness in these months arrives as an uninvited guest, lodging deep within ribcage and sinew. We move quietly, each step measured, so as not to steal warmth from the shivering form on the pallet. I fill a small iron kettle with water near the hearth, coaxing a flame to life beneath it. Beside the cauldron, a bundle of dried herbs, marjoram, yarrow, and meadowsweet, waits in a woven basket. My mother taught me that these sages of the field hold the memory of summer's sun and, when steeped in hot water, they can draw out fevers as a river carries away autumn leaves. I tip each leaf into the bubbling broth, inhaling their fragrant steam, and stir with a wooden spoon carved by our father last spring. Ingrid cradles a cloth-wrapped warming pan against our mother's calves. The iron within glows faintly from coals borrowed from the hearth's dying embers. We wrap the pan in a square of linen, soft but rough to the touch, and tuck it beneath our mother's woolen skirts. The heat seeps slowly inward, coaxing her blood to flow and her bones to uncoil their ache. I brush stray hairs from her pale cheek, the action as tender as any lullaby. Outside, the wind buffets the cottage walls, rattling shutters and bending young trees. Inside, We ration flame and fuel so that our hearth keeps flickering life instead of roaring waste. One small fire must serve three purposes: to warm water for healing, to cook meager meals, and to hold back the cold. We choose each moment at the hearth with care, only when the kettle calls, only when the cauldron needs its flame. Our neighbors pass by in the morning, drawn to our door by the scent of herbs or the soft gleam of chicken broth. Midwife Agnes arrives shortly after sunrise. She moves with practiced grace, her basket packed with poultices of plantain and willow bark, her fingers skilled at finding pulse and warmth. She whispers to our mother in measured tones, her voice a thread of calm in the room. Agnes teaches us how to roll bandages with gentle tension, how to apply ointments of rendered fat and crushed comfrey to ease swollen joints. We work in near silence, speaking only when necessary, for hushed voices help preserve precious heat. Even the children tiptoe past the chamber door, pressing their foreheads to frosted panes, wondering if their mother will rise again. Fear is present as a shadow at the door, but it does not dominate our hands or our hearts. Instead, we tend each task with quiet determination, scouring pots, grinding herbs, drawing water, and stirring the healing brew. At midday, I slip away to feed the hens, moving swiftly so as not to linger in the cold longer than needed. Their clucks remind me of life cycle, egg to chick, chick to fowl. Inside, I return with a single warmed egg, its small heat cupped in my palm. We crush its shells into the porridge for extra calcium, hoping it might strengthen weakened bones. Even the smallest gift from the farm carries profound comfort when bodies are strained by fever. The afternoon light wanes, and the fever in our mother's brow rises again. Agnes boils elder bark until the liquid turns dark as autumn dusk. We sip spoonfuls of the bitter brew, willing its properties to ease the burning within. We fold linen strips into pockets beneath her blankets, tiny sachets of rosemary and lavender meant to comfort both skin and spirit. Our prayers, whispered into cloth, feel carried by the steam toward heaven. Sometimes, despite our best efforts, the body cannot mend. I remember the cold morning when Father did not speak as Ingrid and I knelt beside him. His breath left him in shallow waves until it did not return, and we watched as the candle's flame wavered and died. In those hours, silence held us like an impossible weight. Death in winter brings a hush heavier than any snowfall, settling on the hearth, the walls, and our beating hearts. We buried Father on a day when the ground was as hard as stone. Neighbors took up shovels, breath rising in plumes of white. The coffin's lid felt like a seal between warmth and snow, and I laid a sprig of rosemary on his chest to guide him beyond frost's reach. At the grave, we sang a simple hymn, our voices rising awkwardly, yet filled with faith that souls endure where seasons cannot follow. After the funeral, chores waited. Ingrid and I took up his work, collecting water, tending animals, hauling peat, each action a quiet tribute. We carried his memory in every lifting of buckets and every clink of milking pails. In doing so, we honored the promise that life carries on, even when grief is fresh and raw. As evening falls, we gather around the hearth again. The kettle warms, and we pour broth into a single wooden bowl, sharing it between us in small sips. The warmth blooms in our bellies, and we lean together, forging strength in unity. Even in mourning, kindness and care become the threads that weave us back into belonging. We boiled elder bark for fevers, whispered prayers into folded cloth, and hoped the morning would bring breath again. If someone you love crosses your mind just now, send them warmth in your thoughts, or write their name down to keep close. I stand at the threshold of change, watching icicles drip their crystalline tears into muddy puddles that glimmer like stolen jewels. The brittle hush of winter's grip loosens here, where the frozen earth exhales in slow, hopeful breaths. Each droplet that falls whispers of thaw, gathering rhythm beneath a pale sun that lingers longer in the sky. I press my hand to the rough bark of an oak, its branches bare but for small, swollen buds that promise future green. In this moment, I feel the weight of months past, yet I lean forward, eager for the soft return of warmth. At dawn, I join the villagers as they venture into fields slick with thawing frost. We tread carefully on soggy paths, our boots squelching through melted snow, leaving soft imprints that fill with water. A lamb's lonely bleat drifts from a nearby pen, calling for its mother. I scooped up a newborn lamb last night, its coat damp and matted, its breath a tiny puff of life against my wrist. Now it frolics in wet grass, stumbling and springing as it learns the earth anew, and its playful joy lifts a heaviness from my heart. Back in the yard, we shake out woolen blankets and straw mattresses, spreading them over fences and wagon beds to air under the tentative sunshine. The blankets are stiff with long sleep, bits of barley straw clinging like memories. We brush them, pat them, and fold them into neat stacks. Each fold feels like a promise that comfort will return, that skin once bound by scratchy fibers will soon breathe freely in softer cloth. The world feels gentler beneath the sun's modest strength. Repairing fences becomes sacred work. The cold months warped rails and posts, and yesterday's frost split wood like broken promises. With hammer and nails, we strengthen each rail, lean new boards where rot claimed old, and tighten rope bindings. My hands ache, but each strike of metal onward rings with purpose. These fences will hold lambs, goats, and hopes alike, defining the boundary between wild and safe, winter and spring. In the hearth room, Agnes the midwife tends her own chores. She lays aside bundles of dried herbs and reclaims fresh stalks of rosemary and thyme. We steep them in hot water again, brewing teas to welcome gentle winds of renewal in our bellies. The scent of green shoots and sap mingles with lingering hearth smoke, reminding us of the endless cycle of rest and regeneration. Even the heavy iron cauldron feels lighter, as though its purpose has shifted from mere survival to celebration of what follows. Children gather at the edge of the forest, their laughter ringing like silver bells as they chase after frogs awakened by muddy streams. Their coats are damp, sleeves rolled, faces flushed with joy. I kneel to observe tiny green shoots pushing through wet soil. A sprig of wild garlic nods its head, and I pluck it, crushing its leaves between my fingers to release a sharp, promising aroma. It symbolizes spring's persistence, biting, bold, unafraid of frost's fading rain. Midday finds me mending Jonas's leather boots by the hearth's glow. I stitch supple patches where winter's moisture cracked the soles, each careful pull of thread a vow that he will walk strong once the fields call him. Nearby, my neighbor Marta sharpens a scythe blade, sparks flying like tiny suns released from stone. The bright glimmer on aged wood brings warmth to our bones, a reminder that fire and work carry us forward. At the village smithy, hammers ring against anvils in an early celebration of returning flame. The blacksmith forges new horseshoes for foals born during the thaw, ensuring their delicate hooves find firm footing. We watch sparks dance across our faces, faces lined by frost and time, now softened by hope. Even the heat of the forge feels more generous, less the fight for survival, more a pledge of growth ahead. As afternoon light wanes, I wander to the stream at the village edge. Meltwater rushes over stones smoothed by centuries of flow, carrying leaves and twigs released by days of thaw. I cup the clear water to wash my hands, feeling the cold slide away and gentle warmth follow. The stream's song speaks of journeys far beyond our valley, of distant blooms bursting open when their time arrives. In the barn loft, my brothers shake fresh straw into piles for newborn chicks soon to greet the world. They hum a chant that echoes off timber beams, infusing the air with a quiet hymn of renewal. The barn smells of damp hay and earth, mingling with the faint sweetness of chick down. Work here is reverent, each movement marking a step away from winter's hold. As evening draws near, we convene beside the hearth for a gentler ritual. Jonas lights 2 candles, their flames steady and slim, and places them on the table as beacons against lingering twilight. We gather around, offering bread softened in broth, small wedges of smoked fish, and fresh eggs laid by eager hens. The meal feels celebratory but tender, flavored by gratitude rather than hunger. Soft chatter drifts through the room, plans for fieldwork, hopes for rain, anticipation of first flowers. I close my eyes and breathe in the mingled sense of damp wood, budding leaves, and embers dying to soft ash. I remember nights when the world was locked in ice, when we huddled for warmth, each breath a prayer for light. Now, as the wind shifts from sharp to soft, I feel kinship with every trembling bud and every thawing stone. Winter will return, as all seasons do, but